There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door. Open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him, and he said, Behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us. The things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody. Andy White here. And what you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. Good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in for this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. Hey, do me a favor. Let me know that you are listening. In fact, you can join in listening and watching as well, because I am streaming live over at my YouTube channel. Just go on over to YouTube, look up Andy White, Open Up the Doors if you haven't already subscribed, and you can join in the conversation there and let me know where you're watching from. I would love to just really know where everybody's watching from all around the fruited plain. If you've never liked my Facebook page, the link for YouTube is over on. I posted it on the Facebook page as well. So for those of you on Facebook, it's facebook.com/faithfm91.7. If you never liked my Facebook page, please go on over there and like the Facebook page. Again, the link for the YouTube is posted there. We used to live stream on Facebook, but there's too many problems over there with their streaming and different issues. So we've moved on over to live streaming here on YouTube. We are, of course, streaming all around the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe right here from Faith FM across the internet at hamptonschristian.com. And if you happen to be outside of the Faith FM broadcast area, the best way to listen to Faith FM Christian programming 24/7 is to download the free Faith FM app. You can get the app at the Google Play Store for your Android platforms. You can get the app for your Apple platforms, of course, at the Apple Store if you're outside of the Faith FM broadcast area. Alrighty, so I think that's all of my preliminaries. I think I've got them all out of the way. And wow, I was chatting with people before I came on the air here how the east end of Long Island is beginning to look like Siberia. We had a couple of more inches of snow last night on top of the snow we had a few days ago, on top of the snow we had a week ago, and I hear there's more snow on the way. So anyway, it is wintertime. It is still the, well, I guess we're into the second week of February now. So it's cold out there here on the east end of Long Island. Bet you it's still cold in Siberia as well. But I want to get on with what I need to get on here after all my my opening. Just want to draw the audience in to the conversation here. Let me know where you're listening from, of course. But the last few weeks, the last few broadcasts, we have been talking about the Great Reset. Started about 3 or 4 weeks ago. All those videos are up on the YouTube channel as well as my Rumble channel. But I'm going to continue on with that theme because it's huge. It's huge what's going on. There's a big plan. It is a big plan. It's being put out by the UN. It's a big agenda. It's actually called Agenda 2030, actually. Something that the UN's been putting together for years. Agenda 2030, but Agenda 2030 is being worked out and implemented by world leaders, even as I speak, people, working in conjunction with the World Economic Forum. The agenda is already well underway. The great resets that they call it, the Great Reset that we've been talking about. And so many of you have been hearing about now for some time, I'm sure. It's a huge agenda. We've been talking about this agenda now for a few weeks, as I said a moment ago. What's on the agenda? Well, here is how they like to portray it anyway. The Great Reset. The reset is for systems over the long term of establishing through our collective imagination. Yeah, that term itself is I can go down a bunny trail with just their collective imagination as well. Anyway, before I digress right away, the reset is for systems over the long term of establishing through our collective imagination a great reset, a new equilibrium among political, economic, social, and environmental systems toward common goals. Oh, that sounds so purty, as they would say down south. But it's really just a bunch of euphemistic verbiage to obfuscate the real agenda. What's the agenda? The real agenda, to put it in the most basic layman's terms, it's about control. It's about control. It's about your freedom of movement, your freedom to own your own stuff. I know it sounds crazy, but those are their very own words, not mine. You will own nothing and be happy. The videos put out by the World Economic Forum's Great Reset tell us. You will own nothing and be happy. You see, folks, their agenda is about total control, your freedom to work. Anybody been around, seen what's been going on the last year here? Not only in America, but around the world. The agenda is about control, your freedom to work, your freedom to eat what you want to eat, your freedom to travel wherever you want to travel. And if you're allowed to travel, they will control the means used of how you travel. After all, if they get their own way, you won't have a car because you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You will be happy. See, I'll say it again. It's about control. That's what the agenda. What's on the agenda? Control. The Build Back Better Great Reset agenda is for total control of your life and your freedom in every way imaginable, in every way possible. Now, I want to pick up a bit because I ran out of time last week talking about what I want to talk about because, yes, the Great Reset even has a plan for your food production. It has a plan for where they want to nudge you into your eating habits. I'm telling you, it's about control. It's about every possible facet of your life that they can control. And I began to touch upon this last week, as I said, and I just completely ran out of time. But, you know, back in the 70s, or might have been the 80s, Henry Kissinger said this. I think it was the 70s. Henry Kissinger said, control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control the people. There was an article put out in a magazine back in November, a magazine called The Defender, which is a media platform by the Children's Health Defense, and it was doing a write-up on the Great Reset's agenda, and it specifically got into what the Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset about some of their plans for food production. It's scary stuff, and most of us don't even know this is going on. But this article pointed out some of the issues with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset plan for the food industry. Let me quote from the article. The architects of the Great Reset food plan claim that their plan, their Great Reset, will reduce food scarcity, hunger, and disease, and it will even mitigate climate change. That's a quote by the World Reset. That's what they believe. That's their fantasies. That's their collective imaginations. That's their utopia that they're trying to concoct. But the article went on to say, but a closer look at the corporations and the think tanks that the World Economic Forum is partnering with to usher in this global transformation suggests that the real motive is tighter corporate control over the food system by means of technological solutions. Let me repeat that. Its real motive is tighter corporate control over the food systems. I've been talking about this corporatism since the first broadcast on this series I've been doing on the Great Reset, because this is what it is. It's corporatism. It's global fascism. A control the food production. You'll control the people. India is headed toward what they call a zero budget natural farming. Now, India's got I believe at least 1 billion people there, right? A lot of people. And as it is, they already don't eat steaks, most of them. As it is, they already don't eat cows. But I won't go down that path. But India is headed toward a zero budget natural farming. Quote, a brand new concept of farming in which farmers, listen to this, in which farmers must trade the carbon rate in their soil on the global market if they want to make a living. They'll get no money at all for the crops they actually grow because, you'll own nothing and be happy. The farmers won't own their crops. They won't own their land. They just need to deal with measuring the carbon rate in their soil and then exchanging carbon credits. Now, if some of you would say to yourself, well, that's in India. Well. Don't blink. Don't hold your breath. Because Build Back Better Joe has already hopped on this train of carbon rating soil economics, for lack of a better terminology for this nonsense. Because just 2 weeks ago, with the stroke of a pen, Joe Biden essentially introduced that very thing here to American farmers, folks. I bet you didn't know that. You see, the Trump administration had set aside $30 billion to help farmers suffering from the trade wars. You know what was going on the last few years with China and the trade war and the tariffs and stuff, and a lot of people were saying that the American farmer was going to hurt the most from this because of our trade with China, with the farm industry, which I'm going to get into in a moment. But Trump was helping those farmers. He had set aside from all these different economic things that they've been doing, all these COVID relief packages and different things. Trump had set aside, hear that number now, $30 billion to help farmers, to help them keep their farms operating, to help them with their bills in case because the Chinese weren't buying their goods anymore, which I won't go into that right now, because even that's a little bit of a sleight of hand. Bottom line is this. Trump was trying to help the farmers by keeping them afloat with these subsidies and with these bailouts and whatnot. But last week or 2 weeks ago, Biden signed that money away. He took it away from the farmers because Biden's plan is to create a quote-unquote carbon bank. And that carbon bank will pay farmers as long as they use, quote, sustainable farming practices to capture carbon in soil. That thing I was just talking about a moment ago that they're implementing in India. Yeah, they're implementing it here now under the Biden administration as well. They will pay farmers this money as long as they're farming according to their dictates and according to their rules and regulations. Folks, this is dangerous. This is very dangerous in the long term, because not only will it put out the small farmer out of business because they won't be able to do this stuff. They will put out the small farmer. They will put out of business the family-owned farms and businesses, which is exactly what they want, by the way. No private-owned businesses or farms. They want to put the government in charge of the food production, plain and simple. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. Yeah, they want to put the government in charge of food production. That worked out real well in the Soviet Union back in the 1920s. The Great Famine killed a million people, millions of people in the Soviet Ukraine. Why? Because the communist government decided to take over the food production. The communist government decided to confiscate the farms from the Ukrainian farmers who knew how to farm and put it into the hands of bureaucrats and the communist bureaucracy who don't know how to farm. And it resulted in a million deaths and starvation in the 1920s. Now, you might say, well, that wouldn't happen today. We've got technology, and we're smarter than that. I actually heard somebody say that. Well, we're smarter than they were 100 years ago. Well, it just boils down to, if you want to trust government bureaucrats and big corporations over the mom and pop farm stand down the road, I got a bridge I could sell you in Brooklyn. It never works, people. It has been tried time and time again. Socialism has been tried time and time again, and it's failed every place that it's worked. Socialism is the gateway to communism. Remember, that's what Lenin said, not John Vladimir. So let me tell you about the EAT Forum, because I'll bet you, most of you have probably never heard of the EAT Forum. But the EAT Forum is another one of these ancillary committees and organizations attached to the UN that is working out of the UN with the 2030 Agenda and the World Economic Forum, the EAT Forum. And I want to talk to you for a moment about their rise to food imperialism, because I just read they just recently had, the end of January, the 2021 Food Systems Summit. The EAT Forum conducted this 2021 Food Systems Summit, and they announced their new leader back in January, whose name happens to be, I have it here, Dr. Gunhild Stordalen. Dr. Gunhild Stordalen, who I have never heard of until I looked this up on the EAT Forum website, was appointed a leading role at the United Nations Food Systems Summit, which is attached, again, to the Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum. So anyway, this doctor is now the chair of one of the summit's action tracks, which their action track is to shift to sustainable consumption patterns, with a wide mandate to build a broad multi-stakeholder coalition around the key challenges and opportunities and leveraging the EAT platform to the full. Well, what is the EAT platform to the full? It's basically a corporate takeover of farms and to nudge society into changing their eating habits. Let me read this from here. Listen to let me quote from this Dr. Broomhilde. I'm sorry, her name wasn't Broomhilde. Her name was Gunhild Stordalen. Anyway, this is what she said just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Quote, "International summits rarely change the world by themselves, and especially not now given the global political climate. Our goal is therefore to take full advantage of the summit to build an unstoppable global movement for change that we can keep growing well beyond the summit, to force the kinds of far-reaching changes that the world now desperately needs." Let me read her last sentence again. This summit that they just had a few weeks ago in conjunction with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, she says that we need to force. It wasn't going to be voluntary. It wasn't going to be like, come along to get along. Let's get along. No, they're working towards her words. Force the kinds of far-reaching changes that the world now desperately needs. So, to further the food takeover, the World Economic Forum has partnered with this EAT Forum from the UN. And they're setting this political agenda for global food production. And here's another interesting little piece of trivia. You know who's funding this EAT Forum? It was co-founded by the Wellcome Trust Foundation and the GlaxoSmithKline Foundation, both of which are pharmaceutical foundations. Pharmaceutical companies Kind of a weird connection, don't you think? Pharmaceutical companies are funding this Eat Forum food agenda for the globe. I wonder why that would be. I'll let your imagination run wild there. This Eat Forum currently collaborates with nearly 40 city governments across Africa, Europe, Asia, North and South America, and Australia, and maintains close relationships with imitation meat companies such as Impossible Foods. Now, I talked a little bit last week about these imitation food companies and what they're doing with this, fake meat, meatless meat. But who co-founded some of these imitation meat companies like this company called Impossible Foods? And who's funding these Eat Forums around the globe? Well, they're being co-funded by Google, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates. Imagine that. They're being funded by Google, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates. The ultimate aim is to replace farm-grown foods with genetically modified lab creations. To this end, the Eat Forum is working with UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. The Eat Forum is working with UNICEF to establish global dietary guidelines and sustainable development initiatives. What a cabal. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory, except you can look it up. It's all over the UN's website and all these different forums. By the way, speaking of Bill Gates, did you know this? Because I didn't. I'm going to fully admit to you, until I did the research for this broadcast, I did not know this. But did you know that Bill Gates owns the most amount of farmland in America of any other American? Second only to China. But I'll stick with the Americans first. Bill Gates has been buying up farmland like crazy. Bill Gates has quietly become the largest owner of farmland in the United States, according to several reports. And most people are trying to figure out, they're scratching their heads, why is Bill Gates buying up this farmland? Well, if you put farmers out of business and you want to do sustainable quote unquote farming methods, or you just want to use the land to put windmills on or solar panels on, you're going to just use up all your farmland, and you're going to be forced to have to eat this genetically modified and laboratory grown food, I guess. Hey, I'm just saying. Why has he become the largest owner of farmland in the United States? Gates's portfolio comprises about 242,000 acres of farmland and nearly 27,000 acres of other land across 19 states, according to a government land report, a magazine for land investors that tracks the nation's biggest landowners. So we got Bill Gates, who's on board with the pharmaceutical companies, as we all know, working together with the Eat Forum to buy up farmland. But it's not just Bill Gates, my friends. It's foreigners who are buying up all of America's farmlands. Did you know that? Foreigners like China. According to another report, nearly 30 million acres of U.S. farmland are now owned by foreigners. So Bill Gates aside, 30 million acres are owned by other countries. All across America, U.S. farmland, according to this report, is being gobbled up by foreign interests. Now, what are their interests? They're not yours and mine interests, I guarantee you that. All across America, U.S. farmland is being gobbled up by foreign interests. So when we refer to the heartland of America, the truth is that vast stretches of that heartland is now owned by foreigners. And most Americans have no idea that this is happening. These days, a lot of people are warning about the globalization of the world economy, but in reality, our own soil is being rapidly globalized. When farms are locally owned, folks, the revenue that those farms takes in tends to stay in local communities. But with foreign-owned farms, there is no guarantee that's going to happen. It's already not happening. And while right now there seems like there's plenty of food to go around, and you might think, well, it's no major concern. Really? What happens when a food crisis erupts? And there will be food crises. Because once one crisis is done, once a virus crisis is finished, once a coronavirus crisis is finished, they'll come up with some other kind of crisis. That's what they do. So when a food crisis erupts and these foreign-owned farms, you think they're going to give us the food or send their produce, whatever it might be, out of the country? See, these are really very, very serious national security concerns. And I better be careful here. Let me just say, this new administration is fully on board with this agenda. And they are helping with this agenda. Smithfield Foods. This blew my mind. I'm going to have to take a break in a minute. Let me just get through this before I take a break, because this blew my mind. I like pork. I have to admit, I like pork roast. I like pork sausages. I like pork. I'm a big pork eater. I know some of you may not be, but I happen to like pork. But this really bummed me out because I did not know this, folks. Smithfield Foods, big American pork company. Well, we thought Smithfield Foods was American, did we not? Let me read this to you. Smithfield Foods is a meat processing company based in Smithfield, Virginia. It owns over 500 farms in the U.S. It is the largest producer of pork in the world. It has 2,000 independent farms that it subcontracts out, all under the Smithfield Foods banner. Outside the U.S., the company has facilities in Mexico, Poland, Romania, Germany, Britain. Globally, the company has employed 50,000 people, over 50,000 people. It has a reported revenue of $14 billion. Its 973,000 square foot meat processing plant in Tar Heel, North Carolina, was said in 2000, that's 11 years ago, to be the world's largest processing plant. It processed 32,000 pigs a day. I can't even imagine that. But you know who owns it? You know who owns it? Who are the sole owners of the largest pork producing company in the world that you and I have thought was probably American? It's owned completely and totally by China. It is owned by the WH Group of China. They bought this Smithfield Food. They bought it. They bought it outright. And where is it here? The Shanghai Group, WH Group, purchased Smithfield Foods in 2013 for $4.72 billion more than its market value at the time. It was the largest Chinese acquisition of an American company to date. The acquisition of Smithfield's 146,000 acres of land made the WH Group, headquartered in Luhao, Henan province in China, one of the largest overseas owners of American farmland. And I have to be honest with you, I did not know this until just the other day when I was researching out all of these, the spider web of the Great Reset, all of the ancillary things that are happening, all of these different associations and alliances, the cabal that is working together to control our lives. I'm going to have a lot more when I come back. Stick around, folks. Here's a tune by Newsboys called Escape. And I bet you some of us right now, we would really like to escape, wouldn't we? But don't leave. Don't go away yet. I'll be back in a minute. Stick around.
You're being tempted by the same old.
Escape, the Newsboys. Welcome back. I hope you didn't escape from this broadcast. I hope you're still with me. Andy White here. You are listening to Open Up the Doors here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7, 93.3 in that peak, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. And I am here penetrating the unseen powers of darkness by simply speaking the light of truth, sending powers and principalities into frothy fits of frenzy just by showing up and talking on the radio. Well, I want to continue with what I am talking about on the radio. Back in 1944, guy by the name of Henry Wallace, not particularly a well-known guy, but Henry Wallace was an American politician. He was a journalist. He was a farmer. Now, Henry Wallace was FDR's vice president in FDR's first term. There's a trivia question for you. Who was FDR's first vice president? Well, it was this guy, Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace, like I said, he was a journalist. He was a farmer. I'm finding this intriguing because I have a quote. I have something that he wrote in the New York Times in 1944. And since we're talking about these issues that are dovetailing together, political issues, farming issues, economic issues. This guy, Henry Wallace, served as the 11th U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. Again, he was the 33rd Vice President of the United States during FDR's first term. He also served, he was also the 10th U.S. Secretary of Commerce. So it seems really apropos that I would be coincidentally, and it is really coincidental, that I'd be quoting from something that he wrote in 1944 in the New York Times. Quote, this was the New York Times, April 9th, 1944. Henry Wallace said this: "The dangerous American fascist is the man who wants to do in the United States in an American way what Hitler did in Germany in a Prussian way. The American fascist would prefer not to use violence. His method is to poison the channels of public information." You see, with a fascist, the problem is never how best to present the truth to the public, but how best to use the news to deceive the public into giving the fascist and his group more money or more power. Was that not something that was, well, I won't say it was prescient, because that is what Hitler was doing in Germany through the Joseph Goebbels propaganda machine. But look how far it's come with modern technology. Because is this not exactly what we've been seeing with big media and big tech for years now, and especially this past year? Henry Wallace went on to say in his op-ed in the New York Times, "The American fascists are most easily recognized by their deliberate perversion of truth and fact." Hello, can somebody say Facebook fact checkers? Can somebody say the fake fact checkers of all these fact checking companies, all these fact checking sites, every single one of them? A deliberate perversion of truth and fact. They're not fact checkers, they're hack checkers. But I digress. Henry Wallace wrote in 1944, "Their newspapers and propaganda carefully cultivate." Today he would probably say their social media companies, their tech companies, and propaganda carefully cultivate every fissure of disunity. Really? You see, we're hearing a lot about unity. We're hearing a lot about being a global community by the very people who are, again, gaslighting us, because they're the ones who are creating the disunity. Their newspapers, their propaganda, carefully cultivate every fissure of disunity, every crack in the common front against fascism. You see, folks, those of us who are speaking out against fascism, those of us who are really warning and sounding the alarm regarding fascism, are the ones who are being called fascist. because this is how they do it. War is peace. Peace is war. Slavery is freedom. They change the wording. They change the definition. It's 1984 Orwellian newspeak. And these fascists use every opportunity. Now, he wrote this in 1944. I'm going to adjust it a little bit. In 1944, he said, they use every opportunity to impugn democracy. But today, they don't impugn democracy. See, the modern day globalist fascism won't impugn democracy today because the word democracy has become too much of a sacred word. So what do? They simply redefine it and recast it. They claim to be super patriots, but they would destroy every liberty guaranteed by the Constitution. And that is exactly what they're doing. That is exactly what the agenda of the Great Reset would do in America. It would make our Constitution null and void. These super patriots, these fascists, they demand free enterprise. But again, they use that word, and I don't think that word means what they think it means. In fact, I know it doesn't. I've discussed that already. They demand free enterprise, but are the spokespeople for monopoly and vested interests. And that is what fascist corporatism has always been about. That's the Great Reset in a nutshell, my friends. Their final objective, which all their deceit is directed, is to capture political power, so that using the power of the state and the power of the market simultaneously, they may keep the common man, you and me, in eternal subjection. That is corporatism defined. That is the Great Reset stakeholder capitalism in a nutshell. It's amazing how, again, Henry Wallace laid this out in 1944, and it's as good today, it's well said today as it was back in 1944. Because the fundamental principle of a statist worldview is simple. The government is in the best position to create the conditions and provide the framework for the maximum flourishing, at least that's what they would have you to believe, of people. It's all about control, as I said. There are different facets to this control. In order to maximize the principle of government sovereignty, statists need to work to convince people that deferring to the government in every area of life is in the best interest of all. And if you don't defend to the government, they will force you to. Remember what that new head of EAT said. We will force them to. And what's one of the best ways to do that? Well, it's through social credit scoring, something that China's been engaged in for a long time now. But it's coming to America. It's already come here. The Great Reset is this new social contract agenda that will tie every person to it through an electronic ID linked to your bank account and health records. Your social credit ID will end up dictating every facet of your life and will end up dictating what you're able to do. In a blog post put out just the other day by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, they basically endorsed this idea of a social credit score. Let me read, for lack of time, I need to condense this. But you need to understand something about the IMF. The International Monetary Fund is basically the superpower, the World Bank superpower. It has ties to the World Bank. The IMF oversees the entire global economy. And what they wanted to do, they put out a paper last week that they want internet search history, what you and I look up on the internet, to be tied to a credit score. So if you're looking up things, and you can be looking something up for any reason, for research. I was looking up all kinds of things on doing research. I was looking up things about fascism. Doesn't mean I'm a fascist. I want to learn about fascism. I was looking up things on all kinds of things. But they want to use your search history to be tied to a credit score. They presented their findings in a paper. The researchers argue that by using non-financial data, where you're going to online, specifically, quote, the history of online searches and purchases. They want to see what you're searching for, and they want to see what you're buying. Then they said, we can solve the problem of, listen to this quote, We can solve the problem of certain kinds of people not having enough hard data. We can we can solve the problem of certain kinds of people. Income, unemployment, assets available, make those things available. Sorry. You see where this is heading, and I gotta be quick with it. If you don't have the quote unquote right kind of credit score, you will be canceled. You will be ostracized. Now, if this isn't the precursor to Revelation 13, 16 through 17, then someone please tell me what it is. We know the scriptures, folks. He causes both all small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. More and more airlines and countries are beginning to say you will only be able to fly if you can show you've been vaccinated. It's the system of the beast being put together. This system is being designed to have two classes of people, the haves and the have-nots. We are in the place of being preconditioned. I've been saying this for years. I've been shouting this for more than a year now. This world is being preconditioned to comply with the mark of the beast, the haves and the have-nots. Do you have the mark or don't you have it? Do you have the proper credit score or don't you have the proper credit score? I'm not saying it's here yet. It's not here yet, but it's the movement is there. It's moving that way. And the Biden administration, this administration right now, is looking into imposing domestic travel restrictions as a way of curbing the spread of the continuing coronavirus mutations. Never let a good crisis go to waste, and when the one crisis has run its course, we'll conjure up a new one. What's on the agenda, my friends? All of these things. There could be no doubt that there is a definite progressive movement towards the fulfillment of prophetic system, the prophetic system of the beast which has come. And that is exactly how the seduction and the deception will be accomplished. I've said this time and time again. The mark of the beast isn't going to just materialize overnight. It's not going to be some strange and mysterious thing. It's going to be a system that's already been in use and been in place that most people won't even give a second thought to because its technology has been used for years. It's already been in place before the rise of the Antichrist. He will just utilize and make it even more strengthened under his domain. But slowly but surely, the social credit score, and they've been doing this in China now for years. But now, like I said, the IMF wants to utilize it. We see American banks now canceling people. An American, I forgot what bank it was. I think it was Bank of America. Canceled the account of a coffee company, because the coffee company supported Trump. Not that they did anything wrong. They supported Trump. So the banks cut them off. We're seeing more and more authors being denied publishing of their books because they don't hold to the same status, the same narrative. It's about control. It's about having the proper credit score. I need to go to a break. I got a lot more here, but I have to take a break, folks. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. I'm going to cut it off here. I'm going to regroup when I come back to see where I need to go with this in the final moments of this broadcast. But stick around. I'll be right back.
Oh, consuming fire.
Seek his face always.
Yes, seek his face always. Welcome back. Andy White here. You are listening to the Fusion of Heart, Mind, and Soul here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in FP, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. And if you would like to partner with us, please contact the church here at hamptonschristian.com. I know that clip said something else, but go to hamptonschristian.com. We could use your help. We could use your support. We could use your love offerings here. hamptonschristian.com, and donate as you would be able to. We'd appreciate that so much. Also, if you've never signed up, you've never, what's what I'm looking for, subscribed That's the word I'm looking for. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Andy White. Open up the doors. Love to have you on over there. We've got a lot of resources there on the YouTube channel, as long as YouTube keeps us up there anyway. This past week, they took down one of my broadcasts from a month or two ago because, they didn't like what I was saying on that broadcast, so YouTube took down one of my broadcasts. But that is why we've gone over to Rumble for just such a time as this. We've been also using the video platform Rumble as well to archive our materials. So if you've never subscribed to Rumble, you might be better off doing that than YouTube, but subscribe to both. We'll hang out on both. We're just trying to give out resources the best we can in this environment that we now face ourselves in. So I'd appreciate it so much, again, if you would subscribe to either YouTube or Rumble, if not both. All right, I'm going to move on because I am just running out of time. So many things I want to get to about this agenda, what's on the agenda, the 2030 agenda, the Great Reset agenda, because it's all coming together, folks. It's all converging together like I began to share in the last broadcast. I mean, think of what's been going on the last several years, and particularly this past year with AI, the advancements they're having in AI. What's going on with the internet, like I just shared, they're just shutting down conservative thought. They're just shutting down free speech. They're shutting down anyone who goes against the narrative across the internet and with these big tech companies. In Europe, European microchipping is already fairly common. There's only a few spots here in America, but European microchipping is fairly common. Cryptocurrency is being pushed more and more. Again, all these things are coming together on the Great Reset agenda. The so-called credit scores I shared with you a moment ago is becoming more and more of a reality that's being utilized. Banks are already denying services to people they deem as unacceptable. Oh, by the way, I need to make a correction, because in my last block I said I thought it was Bank America that canceled this pro-Trump coffee company, and all they did was sell coffee. But it wasn't Bank America. I don't want to be sued for misinformation. It was Chase Bank. I just saw that in my notes. Couldn't remember who it was, but during the break I was going over my notes because I got to combine stuff here. But my point that I was bringing up in the last block is that all this technology, all this infrastructure will someday be at the heart of the Mark of the Beast system. All of it will be combined into one system. It's already here. And in large measure, it's already happening in China. Just like the China virus, it's spreading around the globe. Because the economy must be under control of the elite global corporatists for their agenda to work. So there needs to be as minimal as possible privately owned and small business mechanisms. Therefore, private ownership needs to be wiped out as much as possible. Again, to use the World Economic Forum's own words, you will be happy and own nothing. Folks, this isn't a fairy tale. This isn't a sci-fi movie. It's already and actually happening. Again, in places like China and in other places of the globe. And as I read a moment ago, the IMF thinks it's a good idea to implement worldwide. I want to get to something before I close. I've only got a minute or two left. This might seem like a little bit of off the track, but it's not. Again, because all these things are working together. But you see, there's this new bill that's being presented by Congress called H.R. 350 that I want to inform you about. And I'll probably have to get into this a little bit more in the weeks ahead. H.R. 350. I didn't get to read the whole bill. I'm going to need to read the whole bill, but I did read a couple of the first pages, and it's not a good thing. Because the left is using the Capitol riot of January 6th as its Reichstag fire moment to criminalize and silence and destroy not only President Trump, former President Trump, but all Americans who still dare to oppose the sinister, woke totalitarianism that we're seeing taking hold in this earth. This sinister, woke totalitarianism that is the face behind the mask of the Great Reset. But this H.R. 350, let me get to it, just highlight it. This H.R. 350 is an act that will authorize dedicated domestic terrorism offices within the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to analyze and monitor domestic terrorist activity and require the federal government to take steps to prevent domestic terrorism. Well, I thought that was what these agencies were already doing, you would ask. It would be a good question to ask. Don't they already do that? No, this is putting these agencies, the DOJ, the FBI, on steroids, and they're calling it. Congress is calling this H.R. 350 the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021. It's pure poppycock, folks. It's propaganda that they're utilizing to push their agenda. I am running out of time. I'm going to have to hit on this next week. But this H.R. 350, I read, like I said, a couple of pages. It talks about white supremacy like in every other paragraph. It never mentions Antifa. It never mentions BLM. It talks about hate speech and hate groups, but their focus is on what they are calling white supremacy. You see, folks, what's a white supremacist? According to the left, a white supremacist is basically anybody who doesn't agree with them, who doesn't agree with their wokeism, who doesn't agree with their agenda. What's on the agenda? It's an antichrist Marxist globalism. And this H.R. 350, folks, just reading a few pages of it, it sounds like what they want to institute is a American version of the SS, an American version of the Stasi. And if you think I'm over exaggerating it, go to government.org or whatever it is, look up H.R. 350, do your homework and read it. I have to read more of it, but it's not good. It's not good that something like this would be even thought about happening in America. This was something, folks, that we knew was going to happen. But we've got to resist it. We've got to speak out against it. We've got to warn people about it. We have got to stand up against this. I'm going to definitely have to come back to this next week because this is bone chilling. And I am really basically completely out of time and I've got to go. But brothers and sisters, in the meantime, until I come back next week, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. So next week, beloved, have a great week.